Hello and welcome to our daily sketching routine. It is Friday, May the 23rd, 2025, and today's topic will be called Crafting Your Own Art Process. But before we begin, welcome back if you're returning and welcome if you're new to the channel. I sketch and post every day and I use timers to stay focused and to build a habit. I'll start a 10-minute timer, and this is going to be one of those more conceptual kind of videos, but they'll also be sketching. To begin with, I came up with this drawing based upon yesterday's video, so I'll put a link to yesterday's video in the description, and it's also in the drawing comics playlist. And yeah, there's just something that I ended up with from like after the video, and I put it's on a sheet of printer paper, and I put them into these plastic sleeves and keep them in a binder. That goes along with the idea of like crafting your own art process, because yesterday I talked a lot about that, like having thumbnails and then like a quick sketch and then like a layout sketch. And I call it like a layout sketch because I used it as kind of a reference for like a bigger version of this. You can also do like a one-to-one, like just the exact like size depending on your goal. It's good to have sort of something like this to look at, but it's also good to have stuff like this to look at. So this page was originally kind of talking about comics. So yeah, just to get back on topic, I'm just going to sketch something here just for today's sketch. But before I get into it, I wanted to go over like different tools because I think that's part of the craft of it. I think it's important to have a process, which is part of the craft. There were a lot of ideas I had for this video. I could have talked about like how to critique your own stuff because that's also part of it, but I'll save that for like another video. And then there's also like how to draw certain things. So I'll sketch something here, and I feel like the majority of my videos sort of show you how I draw things or how you might draw like certain things or approach it. But then I think sometimes it's also important to kind of talk about like the craft and like the process itself, because most of the time that's actually you as the artist, like that's what you're dealing with. So with that said, let me just kind of go over like some tools. Over the past year, I've been making these daily videos, and my favorite thing to use is like this Papermate felt tip pen. It's a medium point. It just kind of grew on me. I basically just use whatever I have. I've been organizing for a while now, all my stuff. I put these grips on it because I bought a pack of them, and there's like 6 of them or like several of them. And I just put them. So I talked about these in some other videos and also in yesterday's video. So I put it on this lead holder. So I'll just kind of like talk about that for a little while. So yeah, this pen is like pretty cool. And so that's like a medium point. So you can use whatever. I used to use the Precise. I don't have one on me. That used to be like my sketching pen. And then yeah, like a lead holder. So one of these. So I have a few of these. So I put the grip on it here. Now I stopped using a lot of these things because I did digital art for years, so that's why I'm kind of organizing these. So I put the grip on like a mechanical pencil, and I'll go through all of these just in this little area, sketch something. This is a ballpoint, like a zebra ballpoint. I don't think the brand really matters, but it's more like the purpose of it. So like this is like a fine point, or like like extra fine or something. A Sharpie, like some kind of marker. This is really handy, like there's like a Sharpie white marker or like whatever, but like the paint, especially if you're using ink. But also it's kind of a nice look. It can be used for like special effects. This is like a chisel, so like special type pens. So there's also like a brush pen. So those are just some things that I have and that I've used in the sketchbook. But just to begin with, and to kind of talk about like the crafting your own. So part of that is the tools that you use. So just to get started sketching, I'm going to use this. I don't sharpen it. To get like a sharper line, or a finer line, I use like a mechanical pencil, and this is like a lead holder. And the lead itself is like an HB lead or something. And I use it pretty like loosely. And I'm just going to add to this. So in a way, this will just be kind of a demonstration. But also, I just wanted to talk about it. But it's just kind of a demonstration of a sketch. So right here, so part of the process is keeping a sketchbook, and I wanted to do a video about like keeping a sketchbook. I might do that tomorrow. So part of it, like this sketchbook has, I'm going to call this sort of like my working sketchbook because it has a lot of different topics. It has a lot of different styles to it. And so I'm going to draw like this skeleton right here just because, and that's kind of my point. Like this page kind of has its own theme, and there's some pages that are random and then start to have like a theme. And then this page is about like comics, and that's okay. Like if you have a sketchbook where that's why I'm kind of calling it the work sketchbook, because there's a lot of different styles, a lot of different, that's part of like the crafting of the process. So part of the process is you could use a pencil like this. So part of it is like the fun of it, like the enjoyment factor. You can also use just like a regular pencil. And that does affect things like when I use sort of the wooden pencils, I tend to want to do like figure drawing or something like life drawing. When I use this, it's sort of, it has this kind of vibe to it. Like, cause I used it for drawing like comics when I was younger. And you can kind of be loose about it. And also like the blue pencils, I don't have any. I used to use those all the time. So if you are still learning different things, because I talk about like beginner, intermediate, advanced, just for convenience. I mean, we're all still learning stuff, so. And even if you are advanced in one thing, you might be intermediate in one thing, or like a beginner like in another kind of thing. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. But however, if you are a beginner at most of it, at most of like an art process, so this could be a process, it's just have like a pencil. So that's why I wanted to go over some pencils. So I'm just going to draw like this skull. That's the other thing as far as like things to draw. You might want to just study different things, like study like the skull, because you might have a character that is a skull. So this isn't a bad way to kind of get into it and have it be sort of low pressure. So one thing is get like a sketchbook. So this sketchbook is just, it's basically printer paper, but it's like bound. And I got it from one of my old jobs. Like I used to do this, like just print books and like book binding. And this is like a test booklet. So I'm just using that. And yeah, I'll do a kind of like a sketch. It's not really going to be a sketchbook tour, but it'll be about like keeping sketchbooks. And I'll just kind of talk about that. That might be for tomorrow. So when you have a sketchbook, it's going to be bound and there's going to be blank pages. So I pretty much filled this sketchbook, but then there's like these empty spaces. So that's part of the process. That's a good way to get into the process. That's a very like solid way to get into all of this. And you can have like a work sketchbook. So this one, it just has different kinds of work in it. And as far as like the process, another topic is this idea of like how to critique your own work, because it can be tricky, because when you look through it, you'd be surprised. It could be years have gone by and you're basically a totally different person. And so that's like a whole other kind of process, a whole other kind of like way to approach it. So for example, with this, like if you tell yourself, well, I'm going to use a pencil and I'm going to do like a pencil sketch, you should be able to do it like in your sketchbook and just leave it kind of like this, where since this is my work sketchbook, I had ideas about different types of comic book concepts and ideas and like the process of it, like thumbnails and stuff. If I were sitting here trying to critique my own work, I wouldn't do this because this is like kind of nothing to like other people. So I started this last October. There's a lot of really useful information that at the time I wasn't even like truly aware of. So that's kind of my point, and that's why a sketchbook is important, because it's like a journal. And in fact, like I keep a journal and a sketchbook. I tend to keep sketchbooks kind of like this, where it's sort of like a working sketchbook, but I do have like more finished pieces in this one. That's kind of it. Another topic that I wanted to cover was the idea of like completing like drawings or paintings or art pieces. And then once you have this, like it's not bad to like just have this, but like you could fill a whole sketchbook with like sketches like this, and it would be incredibly helpful is my point. And I've had sketchbooks where it was kind of like this, and that's how you get better at things. Because you can always go back and erase and add. And so for example, I'll go in with the mechanical pencil. So this is like a 0.5 or something, but just compared to like this. So this is kind of a good way to get into like the ink stuff, where you can just draw like straight to ink. And I'll kind of talk about that in a minute. But now that you have this much, you might want to, so part of it is like, it can be darker. And you can kind of do this. Now this skeleton is like I was calling it a lich from D&D. So its face, it can have different expressions because it's dark magic. So kind of like that. And that's not a bad process since that's what today's topic is about. It's not like a bad way to go about it. So you can just kind of sketch something. And then you can move to, let's say like, instead of doing this, you can just have a ballpoint pen. But I'm just going to stick with the sketch here. So yeah, you can do this. And it's sort of in between a pencil and a pen, an ink pen. So you can add more detail that way. And yeah, for a sketch or like a sketchbook, this is a pretty fun and useful way to sketch things. So you could have skipped the pencil, but it also looks pretty good this way too. So you can have like the thin. So if you do that, now I'm not so much wanting this video to be about what I'm drawing and or like even like the tools I'm using. This is just kind of an idea, an example. But really what I'm wanting to do is talk about like crafting your own process. And so some of this, like that's what I kind of intuitively started to do. And as you keep a sketchbook, so it was like a long time ago that I started like really keeping a sketchbook and that like really finding like the joy of it. And you don't have to make it public, obviously. what happens is that maybe you start to change your like process in order to make other people happy, or maybe to like do certain jobs or something. And so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about, was how important it is to have your own process and to like honor that process and respect that, as far as what's going to keep you creating and drawing and painting and stuff. So these are just like ideas. So that, like thumbnail, sketch, a layout. When you have something like this, I mean, you could detail it, but let's say that I think to myself, well, that could be like a cool shot, like a cool like panel in a comic. Then I would just keep it like this, because there's like another look to it. And yeah, it also depends on like what you're going for, like the style that you're going for. And then here's like the medium point, and so it's going to look different. Part of this is like a process, so just to show you a process that you could use, because I think it helps to have a process. But then how to draw something is kind of its own thing. Part of that is doing studies. I think that'll be it for today's daily sketching routine. Let me know if you have any questions about crafting your own art process. And I want to thank you for joining me. And if you enjoy these videos, please support the channel. I appreciate it. And until next time, keep on sketching.